Hello, good day. In today's lecture, we are going to solve the homework number two. This homework number two is related to the concept of demand and supply. If you remember, the demand actually explains the behaviors of the consumers against the changes in the price. And say, for example, when you just look at the demand, we look at how people change their quantity demand when the different price levels they face. Now, similarly, the supply curve shows the behavior of the suppliers. Like, say, for example, in the supply curve, we see that how the quantity supplied changes when there is a change in the price comes. This particular concept is majorly related to the free market economy, where the demand and supply interact independently and they decide about the market quantity and market price. Keeping that particular concepts in your mind, if you just look at these questions, like the first question is, the following passage refers to the operation of a free market economy. When we say free market economy, by the free market economy, we mean like an economy without the interventions of the government. And this is the market where the demand and supply forces are the only forces that determine the quantity supplied and the price. Quantity supplied, quantity demanded, equilibrium, and the price. In this particular question, you have to delete the words in italics which are incorrect. Like, say, for example, if you look at this statement, in a totally free market economy, the quantities of each type of good that are bought and sold and the amounts of the factors of production, land, labor, capital that are used are determined by the decisions of individual households and firms through their interactions with the demand and supply. This statement actually tells you about that what exactly the free market look like. In the free market, actually, you have got the concept of private ownership. The people actually have got the decisions to make about their own labor and capital and the land they basically have. Similarly, the producers are also independent in making decisions that what actually quantity they have to supply and how they should change the quantity when the price changes. Now, if you look at the question in the goods market, the households, like say, for example, when you go, what do you do? Like being a household, you demand goods. So what exactly is the solution of this is there? Like, say, for example, you are a demander and the firms actually are supplying the goods. So the firms are actually the suppliers. But this particular kind of a relationship reverses in the labor market. Like, say, for example, when you go to the labor market, you do not demand labor, rather you supply labor. So in the labor markets, the people actually belonging to the household, the people basically who are going to the market, they are supplying their labor. They actually want to work. They are actually supplying their time and their efforts to the people. Like, say, for example, so in the labor market, the households are not demanders, rather they are suppliers. The firms basically take the opposite role. Let's say, for example, the firms basically are the demanders in the labor market, whereas they are the suppliers in the goods market. And similarly, if you look at the further statements, demand and supply are brought into balance by the effects of changes in price. If supply exceeds demand, like say, for example, look at this situation. Say, for example, you have got this demand and supply relationship. Now, this should be the equilibrium price. Now, suppose what happens is if there is a price that is actually the market is setting is above the equilibrium price in this particular kind of a situation, this particular supply will be actually greater than the demand that the people will be making. Like, say, for example, this will be the supply that people actually are trying to make, and this is the demand that people are demanding, say, for example, T1. Now, if there is an excess supply, what happens in the market? Now, whenever you have got this excess supply, the market actually adjusts itself. That's what basically is the power of invisible hand. Whenever the supply exceeds demand, what should happen with the price? The price should fall. Basically, by keeping this lowering down the price can actually attract more people to buy the goods, and somehow the producers may be able to sell the extra stock that they have created. So whenever there is this, if the supply actually is exceeds demand in any market, a surplus exists, and this basically causes the price to fall. Okay, like say, for example, the price to fall. Neither it rises nor that straight rate stays the same because there is supply more than demand. This will lead to a rise. Actually, you have got different options. What will happen? Like say, for example, you may see here this at this diagram. When the price falls, what happens? Like say, for example, if you are just travel from a situation where the supply is greater than the demand, like say, for example, here. Now, what is happening here? When the price falls, you actually have got the backward movement along the supply curve and you have got the forward movement along the demand curve. So this backward and forward movement actually bring the market back to the equilibrium. Now you can see here, like the third option, that basically will cause a rise in the demand and but the fall Like, this particular option will be the correct, a rise in the quantity demand, but a fall in the quantity supplied. So if, however, demand exceeds supply, like say, for example, you might have a situation like this. If the demand exceeds supply, it means that the market is setting price below the equilibrium. Now here is the demand is greater than supply. This is the amount that is being demanded, and this is the amount that is being supplied. Now, if the demand is more than the supply, what should happen? You know what happens? If demand exceeds the supply, like say, for example, if how the demand exceeds the supply, that creates a shortage. Like again, if you draw the diagram for the shortage here, now this particular kind of a curve perhaps actually shows you the shortage here. Now this is the amount that is being actually not supplied because the price is below some kind of a price at which the people are willing to supply that quantity. If, however, demand exceeds supply in a shortage, the price will not fall, rather the price will rise. Because now basically the consumers will bid prices up because they want to buy the goods, but there is a shortage of the goods. So what actually happens? The price rise, and this will actually lead to like what will happen if the price rises, the quantity demand falls. So actually fall in the quantity demand and rise in the quantity supply. So this is what actually the mechanism through which the demand and supply actually equate together when they are not initially in equilibrium. Now we move to the question number 2. This question number 2 is about, again, that you have to decide about that where the demand curve will shift. The question reads, how will the market demand curve for a normal good? The normal means which actually has got a positive relationship with the income. Like say, for example, if the quantity demand of any good has a positive relationship with income, that basically is called the normal good. And what happens in these cases, like say, for example, if the price of a substitute good falls, now say, for example, you are using both the fuels, like say, for example, you are using the petrol and CNG together. If the price of CNG falls, like say, for example, which is a substitute for dollar, what should happen with the demand for the petrol? Now, the demand for the petrol, what should happen? Like say, for example, the demand for the petrol should fall. And when any of the demand basically falls, your demand curve shifts to the left. So, what happens here? So if that basically, if the price of the substitute falls, the demand curve shifts to the left. Okay. Similarly, in a situation when the population rises, people demand more goods, although the prices are not changing, that cause the demand curve to shift rightward. Okay. Because now the more people are demanding the same goods, so actually your demand curve shifts rightwards. Now, similarly, you can discuss the situation where the tastes shift away from the good. People actually feel less, people feel less attracted towards the good. What should happen with the demand curve? The demand curve should fall. And that fall in the demand curve should shift the demand curve to the left. Similarly, the price of a complementary goods falls. Like say, for example, where the two goods are being used together. And if the price of a complementary goods fall, like say, for example, you can think about petrol and car. Now, if the price of petrol falls, what should happen with the demand for the cars? The demand for the cars should rise because you can afford more petrol now for the same car. So what happens that since they are being used together, so the demand for the actually cars will increase, which is actually the cars and petrol are the complementary goods to each other. If the goods become more expensive, by the expensive we mean their price actually increase. The increase in price does not shift the demand curve, rather it brings movement along the curve. So there won't be any shift, it will be a movement along the curve. In question number 3, we are going to do the similar analysis, and we are actually going to look at what should happen with the demand supply curve as compared to the demand curve of the market. When these kind of things happen, like say, for example, cost of production falls. The cost of production is one of the determinants of the supply curve, and that basically are kept constant when we define the relationship between the price and quantity supplied. Whenever the cost of production falls, what should happen with the supply of the goods? Because the supply becomes more profitable, you basically supply more. So what happens that your supply curve should shift rightward. Similarly, if the alternative products become more profitable, if the alternative becomes more goods become more profitable, of course, like, what basically people do, like they invest in the other kind of the products. So they actually supply the goods which are less profitable. So what should happen with the supply curve of that particular good? It should move left. Similarly, the price of good rises, like the price of good is a determinant, or like one of the main determinants of the quantity supplied, and you define the law of the quantity supplied with the price of the goods. So you don't actually have got the shifting of the curve in this particular case. Actually, you get the movement along the curve and the price of the good actually changes. Similarly, if the firms anticipate the price of the good is about to fall, like what they will do in the current period, like they will actually increase the supply right now, basically to get the most of the benefits from the market.